Good evening, everybody. Welcome into the Nittany Lion Sports Report with Bob Long, Tyler Gehlhaus, as always, simulcast on the Small Player Big Play app. Well, Tyler, the regular season, as it was, well, not initially scheduled, but as it was post-COVID scheduled, is in the books. Penn State wins their last three games. It's 3-5 on the year, and off we go to the Big Ten +1 for the first time. Every team gets one more game after the regular season concludes, and Penn State takes on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Missing a little bit of love there. No Lovie Smith coaching the Illini this coming weekend. Should be interesting. An identical 14.5-point favorite as Penn State was last week against Michigan State. And we'll talk a little bit about that Michigan State game. A big game for the seniors. Today we thank them, and unlike any other time we've done this before, we ask the question, hey, thanks, but are you coming back? They're welcomed back if they choose to come back, with everybody getting that free year of eligibility. A lot to get to tonight, so your thoughts on a comeback win, almost 40 points put up on the board, and a solid effort against Michigan State.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was totally a tale of two halves. The first half was very frustrating, at least on both sides of the ball. I was very frustrated with the defense. It just seems like these random quarterbacks come in and have career days week after week, to a certain extent against Brent Pry's defense. Peyton Thorne was his first career start. He had a pretty good day, but that second quarter was remarkable. He went 10 for 10, 3 touchdown passes, and Michigan State was up 21-10. But again, give credit to Penn State for making those halftime adjustments. Outscoring Michigan State 29-3 in the second half. Defense was on cue in the second half. Offense got some things going, and even special teams delivered a touchdown.
Yeah, happy to see Jahan Dotson get on the board. He's kind of been one of those guys that has been close at times in the past. Felt like he needed one block, and he got it here today. Happy for him. He's had a tremendous campaign and is a great receiver here for Penn State. We saw Sean Clifford be better, especially in the second half. We saw actually a throw from Will Levis in a design package. So, again, not a ton of creativity for the most part with Levis, but I think we saw some better things out of the offense. And I know that they were down 21-10 at half, but I wasn't as concerned by what I saw when I watched that happen. Peyton Thorne did throw some balls up into traffic, and the receivers came down with good catches in some respects, and good for them. I didn't feel like there were any major downfield, maybe one major downfield coverage breakdown, but generally speaking, I think you tip your cap to Peyton Thorne, and in some days those are going to be interceptions, and some of them, your receivers are going to come up with fortunate catches, and today was the latter. But I thought Penn State was engaged from the start here. I thought this was arguably the most fun game to watch for a Penn State football fan this year.
Mm-hmm.
And really only the second quarter, when they just started taking the top off with reckless abandon. I mean, the first quarter Penn State defense was locked in, stopping the run, playing good defense. Third and fourth quarter, yes, it was really just that second quarter and a splurge of 3 straight drives that put Michigan State in the driver's seat for a short period of time.
Yeah, the second quarter was terrible. I kept thinking back to, the first really 5 games of the season. It had that same feeling. And that was what was frustrating, was because we had thought we had turned the corner, later to find out that we were able to make a second half comeback, which we struggled to do and actually failed to do all season up until this point. That was the first game that Penn State won where they were trailing at the half. The other 2 games, Michigan and Rutgers, they had the lead at the half. So nice to reverse the course there a little bit and come out playing hard and dominating in the second half. And by all counts, Penn State was so much more talented out there. They had more talent pretty much at every position. So, the better team did win. And depending for the bettors out there, depending on where you got Penn State, 14.5, they did cover. If you got them a little late at 15.5, they did not. So Vegas was right on with this game. So it'd be interesting to see what that very similar line for Illinois where Penn State comes in.
Yeah, and of course the reason they covered is because when they were down 21-10, Penn State scores, they decided to go for 2 in the third quarter to get it down to 3. Without that, it's a 14-point game. and your more
That's right.
traditional 38-24 score. So Vegas is good, really good.
They are. Yes.
I don't know how they do it, but again, I found this to be a really good victory for Penn State. If this was it, and before we were announced that it was going to be Big Ten was going to do the entire +1 schedule, and Penn State was going to get Illinois, my thought was end the season now, right? They're 3-5. Nobody's going for the college football playoff. For whatever it's worth, the pandemic is raging as well, and you're going to where are you going to play these games? Is it going to be a neutral site? Is it going to be a home field? Penn State gets to stay at home, and I think that is certainly a good thing and makes, I think, everybody feel a little bit more comfortable with it, but just doesn't. What's it, Maria Kondo sparking joy? This game doesn't spark joy for me.
Well,
Tyler.
no, it doesn't, but I hate to say it, but it's a money grab if you ask me. You're going to have games even on Friday night in the Big Ten, and then pretty much all day Saturday. I guess it's good for guys that, want to get more looks at, for the scouts and get some more highlight tapes up there. And also for younger guys, maybe an opportunity for them to break in for next year. And is it going to be the last game of the season? I would say that's probably 50-50 right now. I think that, I heard two players, Dotson and Brisker, both mentioned that, we would love to play in a bowl game, yada, yada, yada. Whether or not Penn State would do that, I don't know. We've already seen a couple teams that are bowl eligible decline going to a bowl. I would be really fine if they declined it, given the situation, the circumstances. I would obviously selfishly love to, not that it's the most entertaining or the best team out there, but just to watch and pretty much be entertained for one more Saturday for a couple of hours. But these guys have been through a lot this year. Everybody's been through a lot, but I mean, these players have pretty much been hunkered down and not at all, signing up for something like this, where you're pretty much in between your apartment, the Lash building, and just back and forth. And it's got to wear you out eventually.
Yeah, and now if there's any upside to the bowl, it's that in this particular year with COVID and having to be really in quarantine and unable to go home to see your families, at least the season is going to be ending on the 19th of December. In a normal situation, if not in the Big Ten championship game, their season would be over in late November. And if they were in a New Year's Six bowl game, they wouldn't be playing until more than a month later. And so if you had combined those circumstances into a quarantine situation, I think it would be an easier decision to say no. But in this situation, right, max is going to be a couple of weeks here before you get these bowl games turned around. So maybe there is something to that, but you're still spending the holidays without your folks. You're still continuing the season. And God forbid you get down to, I don't know, Tulsa, Oklahoma for a bowl game, and your opponent gets COVID or has a breakout 2 days before the game. Now you're in some foreign city, and without a game to play and having to find your way back home. Like that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is, all these conferences, well, not all of them, but majority of them did the conference only play for the season. And then you're going to have a bowl game with another conference, obviously. I don't know. I'm not in love with the idea. Again, I wouldn't be totally against it, but I just feel like, and I have no idea, but it just, to me, these guys have to be mentally, more than physically, I would imagine, just drained at this point from everything.
Yeah. And of course, all I'm saying, right, is if the players don't want to play, they shouldn't play. If all the players want to play and the administrators think it's safe, that's not me saying disregard their wishes and don't play. It's my thing is listen to your players and
absolutely,
and listen to your players and think about what's best for everybody. And if that is to play, then yeah, and I think so too. I'm hopeful that they will. It should be interesting. But again, strong victory from Penn State. Clifford looked better. Defense was coming around. Good to see Shane Simmons, with Jason Owe being a late scratch. Good to see him get some time on senior day, and he played very well. And I think there's a lot of good stories about guys that could be done, right? May not choose to come back, although everyone has the option. And a nice performance on senior day for a lot of guys. and really leaves a good taste in your mouth for a season that started so poorly.
Yeah, a little bit of a bittersweet ending, I guess you could say, especially for a guy like Shane Simmons, if indeed it is his last game. Well, not last game, but last year if he's at Illinois on Saturday. But,
Right.
5-star recruit, one of the James Franklin's, original biggest recruit that he got. Injuries, he just never really lived up to the full potential. But it was great to see him go out the way he did on Saturday, on senior day. And, I give somebody like that credit for really never giving up and hanging in there and staying with it. And, whether it's – and that a lot to be said about that for not only football, but he's well prepared himself for bigger things in life. So kudos to Shane Simmons and the whole senior class.
So if there's nothing else on this particular game, I know it's a Penn State show, but I want to talk about – we talked about Coastal Carolina and BYU being the best game of the college football season. I want to talk about the best game of the college football season, and for very few football X's and O's and tactical-related things. Florida against LSU, Saturday Night Football. Our man Todd Blackledge on the call with Sean McDonough. There were so many brilliant things there, Tyler, and we can walk through them. First of all, the fog rolls in to the point where McDonough and Blackledge can't see the field from the broadcast booth. And you know what that means? The cameras can't catch any of the action either. It's so foggy.
So they went to Skycam.
Skycam, where you're looking back behind the play. Again, not the world's best experience, but gosh, unbelievable that ESPN can pull off a broadcast without their main camera feed. That's absurd, but good for them to do it. Of course, there is now Shoegate, where Florida was about to stop LSU, get the ball back with a chance to win the game. Game was tied, I believe, at that point. And they get the stop on third down. Florida defensive back pulls the shoe off, chucks it 25 yards down the field. Pretty much the easiest 15-yard penalty in the history of college football, once you assume that the referee didn't lose the shoe amidst the fog. But LSU goes down, kicks a field goal. Cade York. Florida gets the ball back, comes down the field, misses at the dying moments of the game, and they lose the football game. But, I mean, all those things were phenomenal. All the ways that LSU hung in that game. A true freshman quarterback. The fog, the half-filled crowd, the Shoegate. And then the best thing that I've seen on any broadcast this year, an ode to Mike Patrick from Alabama, Arkansas in 2007. And you may remember this, Tyler, where out of nowhere, Mike Patrick with Todd Blackledge alongside says, Todd, I got to ask you something. What is Brittany doing with her life right now? And Todd says, what? Brittany? Yeah, Brittany. Brittany who? Spears, of course. Oh, I don't know. Is she here? Mike Patrick, I don't think so. Okay, then, and they moved on. They went to the overtime, and there was a game-winning pass thrown, and it was never discussed again until Saturday night, where I believe there was a player from LSU that was recruited and was from the town where Britney Spears grew up, if I'm getting that right. And so Todd Blackledge says, that's the town where Britney Spears is from, and I just have to ask what she's doing with her life right now. And it was so subtle. It was brilliant, and it was the best moment I've seen in the college football all year long.
I didn't catch that, and I didn't know the backstory really either. So I'm gonna have to YouTube that and check that out, because that is good. And Todd Blackledge is obviously a Penn Stater, but he is really, really good at his job. I think he's one of the top guys in college football. But an unbelievable game. I was flipping in between that and the USC-UCLA, which was another really good game. So it was an entertaining week of college football. Obviously, Penn State provided us with some good entertainment as well. As you said, most entertaining game of the season. I couldn't agree more.
We're about to get some entertainment here on the Nittany Lion Sports Report. We're going to bring on, Tyler, Bryan McSorley, who no relation to Trace, but was the original co-host of the Nittany Lion Sports Report, back from my Penn State days, circa 2010 to 2013 or so. It's where the show was born. Obviously, we took a couple of years off after Bryan graduated, actually. He carried the show forward on Bob Long Sports for a year after I was gone. And then it kind of lay dormant after that until you and I got involved. Me, you, and Eric Nash a few short years ago. So, and it's led to the iteration that we see right now. So I am excited to bring him on. It should be a lot of fun to get some guest picks in. And Tyler, we have a undefeated record on the line here. So we've had a whole bunch of 5-1s. Grant Obeliski twice at 5-1, by the way.
He actually went 6-1.
Oh, 6.
Because we threw the Army-Navy game in there late.
Well, but Washington and Oregon didn't play.
That's true. Okay, yeah, he had one loss, and he picked Navy to beat Army.
Yeah. How close it was.
Yeah.
How close it was.
They had their chances, that's for sure.
Yes. So we'll come back on the other side and talk to Brian, go through some of the great moments in Nittany Lion Sports Report history and add some color to that, make some picks, and get on with championship week. It's going to be fun, Tyler.
Yeah, looking forward to talking to Brian about his history with Bob Long Sports and how it started, and obviously talking championship Saturday coming up here.
We'll be right back then here on the Nittany Lion Sports Report.
What does your character look like? Does it bounce back after each setback? Does it stand out by standing up? Does it make good on good intentions? Character is invisible until it's not. Only through action will the world know what it's made of, what you're made of. Find out how you can strengthen the character of your community alongside empowered veterans and families of the fallen at travismanion.org.
All right, welcome back to the Nittany Lion Sports Report. Bob Long, Tyler Gehlhaus. And next up, we have an original Nittany Lion Sports Report host, circa, we'll call it 2010-ish to 2012 or 13. Bryan McSorley is here. Brian, with another season coming to an end, there's nobody we could think of better to bring on to talk about where this show has come in many iterations and forms than you. So welcome, and how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Bob.
Yeah, it's great. I remember the years doing it was a radio show at the time, didn't have the video capabilities that we have now, but we had a lot of good times talking Penn State football and really all other sports at that time, basketball, hockey. The genesis of the hockey program, we were there for the start of that. That was a lot of fun. What sticks out to you as we come to you in a Zoom-infested world where Zoom may not have even existed, at least wasn't on my radar back then? Take the viewers through from where we came.
Well, I mean, we sat at maybe at like a 4x4 kitchen table stock apartment, kitchen table. Then we talked through I want to say we talked through earbuds my first show. I want to say we each had like a left and a right, or we just passed an earbud for the first show that I was on. I remember all of the walks down Calder Way after that show. And I vividly remember like trying to be quiet in between the show that you had before us with Chris and Kevin. And I can't think of what the song is called, but every time I hear it, I feel like I'm about to hop on your show. If I hear it in like a store or something. But there was a song that you played in between. Do you remember what it was?
I mean, we had a lot of good bumps back in the day. There was American Girl by Tom Petty. We had The Thrill by Wiz Khalifa. Had a lot of great bumps, which we've kind of gone away from with the genesis of, video commercials now. But, we might have to throw some of those back on here because those are some classic tunes there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, Bob, but I remember just slugging. You really carried me through the lacrosse segments. Those were literally the hardest ones for me. The hockey was a blast, especially because with the show, I was able to go to the first ever game at Pagula, and I think they scored within like 4 seconds. It was very, very quick. But it was fun to have the show, and I think I ran it out of my apartment my senior year while you were graduated, and I think Kevin and I did it. But
yep. And Matt.
Oh yeah, Matt, my friend Matt. He was on the show, and Oh, he sang. He sang like a Carly Rae Jepsen song the second year, but I remember you and we had a little friendly little wager about overs and unders, and I had to sing "Call Me Maybe" live on the little radio to whoever was listening, and then whoever listened to it via podcast after. So that was not a great moment for me, I don't think, but well worth the fun of the show. I know we had. I personally talk about it semi-frequently, how fun that show was, and how we would have our buttoned up version from 9 to 10, and then we'd have the unbuttoned version from 10 until whenever I decided I needed to go home for class the next day.
No doubt about it. Sometimes at at Pickles, sometimes at the First, depending. There's no bars to go to right now, guys. I'm sorry, we can't split after this segment, but those were the good times. Yeah. And by the way, just to add on, so for Tyler's benefit, and fortunately, in this particular case for you, last year would have been unfortunate for me, but he had to sing 3 songs live on the air, Tyler. The first was, like you said, Call Me Maybe. The second was the Hanukkah song by Adam Sandler, which Happy Hanukkah to those of you watching us that celebrate Hanukkah. And then the third was a Pac-12 fight song of your choice.
And who did you choose?
I think it was Colorado. I think it was like, I think I've Been Working on the Railroad is actually like the song that they based it off of.
Yeah.
So
I think it might be like the same as Georgia. Yeah, I think they have a pretty similar fight song to Georgia. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. That's good stuff.
Yeah. So we had some good times, some ups and downs, right? I mean, that was obviously during the scandal, and we were kind of on the ground level for that. Into a new head coach, Bill O'Brien, and then finished up with James Franklin. But what sticks out as we move kind of towards Penn State football focus now with the show? What sticks out about the movement of the program? Everything changed from the time we started to the time we finished.
Well, what I thought was crazy is we talked about how bad I think they were 8-1 when the sanctions hit. And we talked about how much of a fraud 8-1 team they were. And I think about like this year and how like they started off 0-5. And I think that team would have kicked the crap out of that 8-1 team. Just because, I mean, I liked Matt McGloin as much as the next Penn Stater at the time, but I knew he wasn't it. And one thing I was surprised about was I covered Hackenberg's show when you were on Hackenberg's freshman year when you weren't on the show with us all the time, and I just was so surprised at his lack of progression over the years, because we talked about him as a recruit forever. It felt like we couldn't wait for him to get there, and he didn't end up being the guy. But my not so cousin Trace, he ended up being the guy who actually progressed and turned out to be, well, he's had a longer NFL career even. So
right.
But I wish we would have been there for those years and maybe covering some Saquon, but knowing that we kind of gritted through covering some of like the really tough years, because that year, O'Brien's first year, that team was bad and they had a good record. They were, I think, 8-4.
Yeah, 8-4, maybe 7-5.
Yeah, they started off 0-2, losses to Ohio at home, and then everyone seems to remember the Sam Ficken Virginia game when he missed about 5 field goals, and I think he's still kicking actually in the NFL with the Jets. That's there correct. For a little bit. Good for him.
Yeah, we weren't kind to Sam. At least I wasn't.
So here's a story
the Tuesday
for you.
After the show.
Yeah, here's a story for you. And maybe this person is listening. At minimum, some people that may know this person were listening. So I'll start off with an apology. We were driving back from a cross-country meet. Penn State, our club team, the cross-country meets we would go to. and we were listening to the game on the radio on the drive back, and Ficken misses the field goal. They lose the game. He had missed 4 in the game. And I make a comment, something to the extent of, right, like, should this guy really be playing for Penn State? And that's probably a mellow way to put what I said. And one of the runners on the team was a female runner. And I feel really badly that I can't remember the name. And she says, Sam Ficken is my cousin.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, that's awesome. And I hope that he has a better career going forward. And you know what? Good on the kid. He worked really hard. He did have a great career, now an NFL career. I mean, that's as good of a story as you can possibly ask for. And you brought up the Ohio game. I will never forget the names Bo Blankenship and Taylor Tattleman.
Well, you may not have forgotten about them, but I certainly did. But that's a good memory by you.
Yeah. The one thing I vividly remember about that Ohio game is Gerald Hodges returning a punt and fumbling it. Like, O'Brien came out that week. He's like, we have all the faith in the world in our linebacker to return punts for us, and he didn't return a punt the rest of the year.
Micah Parsons can thank Gerald Hodges for that.
Oh yeah, he actually.
Micah wanted to get back there and return some kicks, man.
Well, Micah had stone hands, so still probably does. I wish he actually would have played this year just so he could have got that pick. He had, 4 dropped picks last year?
Yeah, he did.
Did everything else, though.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. What a joy he was to watch for 2 years.
Yep. Yeah, great times.
He was really only his best football still ahead of him. So, I mean, luckily for him, obviously, and, for Penn State fans, that kind of stinks that we didn't get to have that one more year with him, and we really only got 2 when we knew 3 was probably the max. But he's gonna do Penn State a lot of good when he's in the NFL making plays from a marketing and recruiting standpoint.
Totally agree. Absolutely. I mean, remember, he didn't even play the position in high school, clearly, right? I mean, most guys are going to be down linemen when they're that size in high school and then transition to linebacker in college. But to come out and be signal caller, be the middle linebacker your true freshman year, and to play at that level really was incredible, and it'll be interesting to see what happens to him going forward. I'm going to bring you back for 1 second, Brian, because you were talking about Christian Hackenberg before he came in and how much we were talking about him as a recruit, and rightly so, right? I mean, it's the way we're talking about big-time recruits now, like the way we're talking about the 2022 class, and you hope that those guys will develop better than Hackenberg did. But remember the biggest interview we had on the show, or at least one of them, was Adam Brenneman when he came out of
remember that.
Cedar Cliff High School. And that was a lot of fun. Great kid. Obviously still, a pretty good advocate for Penn State, even though he's moved around, played at UMass, now is coaching at Arizona State. But that was another highlight for me. Yeah,
Adam was a really cool interview because he was a pretty well-spoken kid. It's just he's one of those it's a shame guys, because it seems Penn State's had a couple of those with like their biggest high rah-rah recruits. Brenneman really kept that class together. They really, they all could have gone other places because they weren't going to go to a bowl game at the time while they were there. It's just a shame that injuries derailed his career. But he was a blast to talk to. And I never would have thought Jesse James was going to be the guy that played in the NFL for multiple years over Brenneman. I never would have thought that.
Yeah, that's true. And now a Pittsburgh legend.
Yeah,
Jesse James caught that ball.
That's right.
I was at that game. None of the 12 words that were said after that call happened are allowed to be said on in front of people or children.
Wow, all 12 right in succession. It's a lot of consonants. Nice job there.
Yeah, I would say that it was almost I wasn't the only one, so it made me feel better. But right. No, that was not a great memory in his pro career, but Jesse James was pretty good at college.
Yes, he was. Absolutely. So is there anything that we missed, Brian, before we get to picks, or Tyler, anything you wanted to ask about?
Really, the only thing that stuck out to me, was the Hackenberg and then McSorley transition. and we finally found our quarterback. Well, it looks like we're going through that again, unfortunately, where Penn State's going back and forth between Levis and Clifford, and bringing Levis in just to run, and then bringing Clifford in to throw and maybe run, and it still is the biggest weakness on the team is the quarterback position, and to get to where Penn State wants to go, and the college football playoff, they need somebody to step up at that position. And we've talked about it 1,000 times, Bob. Hopefully it's in the transfer portal. Who knows? Mackenzie Milton's going to Florida State. But, there should be some guys that pop up. But every week I watch, I'm just like, neither one of these guys are the guy that can get them there. And unfortunately, and even the quarterback recruit Vayu they have coming in this class, he won't be ready to play anytime soon. He's a little bit of the development. So hopefully they can hit somebody in the portal and, can get them going in that next direction at least.
I agree. I agree with you there. I'm not over the last couple of weeks. I'm not 100% off of Clifford. Surprisingly, I just don't think he's the guy that he thinks that he is, and I think he realized it this year. Like he tries to do the rah stuff, like Trace would do to pump up the team, and it's not him. That's not how he leads. He's he obviously had a tough year, so it'll be interesting. I actually don't think both quarterbacks will stay. I think Levis Levis or Clifford is going to leave.
It could be an and/or situation, even depending on what they do in the transfer market. But yeah, I would say one of them for sure won't be there next year.
Yeah, devil's advocate here, right? And of course you want to play. And if Sean Clifford isn't going to play at Penn State, of course that's a strong consideration to go elsewhere. But his brother is coming in next year, Liam.
Sure. Oh, I definitely think that there's a better chance Sean's there than Will. And who knows? Maybe Will Levis. I don't see him as a quarterback. I don't think Penn State really sees him as a quarterback. Beans every time he comes in, other than maybe once or twice a game, throwing the ball. I think he's a very good athlete, tough. But even if he is your quarterback, you can't be running them the way they are. You're not a fullback. Even they're running them like a fullback, but I don't know, maybe a different position. There's not much. Tight end's a pretty good spot right now, and even defensively at that size at linebacker, that's even at a pretty good spot. And I'm not saying you'd move a quarterback over to linebacker, but I think he's athletic enough to at least play a different position.
Time for the Lion position again.
Well, yeah.
Perhaps.
He said, hey, if he went to school at Penn State in 13 or 14, he's guaranteed to be playing tight end, linebacker, quarterback, wherever he wanted to.
Punt returner, right?
Yeah,
punt returner.
That's
Levis
great.
returning punts.
Oof. That's great. Well, hey, maybe with that said, we'll get you back on the board with some picks. Don't worry, last place prize this year, you don't need to sing any songs. But what I can tell you, Brian, is nobody has gone unbeaten thus far this year. So
okay,
you can go perfect 6-0. You're gonna be deemed the winner this year.
I think he's got a pretty good chance. I mean, it is championship week. Some of the games that were looking rather enticing, such as the Florida-Alabama game. Obviously Florida's still a good team, but that was a pretty bad loss on Saturday. But it is championship week, so we'll hit the I left the Pac-12 out, and they actually just changed who was playing in the championship anyway, which is really weird. But needless to say, we'll start in the Big Ten, and these are all straight up head-to-head. Some of them are more difficult than others, but Northwestern taking on Ohio State.
I'm going to take the Buckeyes, as much as I don't like to take them to win. Justin Fields is just too good. And there's a reason why the Big Ten changed the rules to have them play in that game, because they're going to need to win it. And I think they're going to come out with a vengeance. They just have too much talent.
There's also a reason why Northwestern lost to Michigan State, and it's because Northwestern stinks. I'm sorry. I mean, it's one of those years where you can just get away with a couple wins here, a couple wins there without doing anything particularly impressive. Northwestern fits into that category. Buckeyes hammer them this week.
Yeah, it's not going to be very close. It's a 12 o'clock game, which is which is really good because there's some other really good games on at 12 o'clock so I doubt many people will be watching this. I think Ohio State's going to steamroll them and probably then move on to college football playoff at 6-0, but that's where we are with this year. The better of the two games, I believe, at 12 o'clock, the Big 12 championship, number 11 Oklahoma taking on the Cyclones of Iowa State.
This might be my favorite matchup as far as being a game this week. And I think Oklahoma avenges that loss to Iowa State. I'm just not a Brock Purdy fan. I'm not sure about you guys. I'm just not. I thought that they kind of like got away from Texas by the skin of their teeth. Not that but I think Oklahoma's rolling. They've won 7 in a row. Or 6 in a row, they're going for their 7th. So I really think that Oklahoma just kind of learns from their last loss to Iowa State and they go on and beat them.
Yeah, I do like Iowa State. I think a little bit more than you do there, Brian. So I've been on that block a little bit longer, but I do think Oklahoma brings this one home and avenges the loss. Obviously, they're not going to go to the college football playoff, but this is going to be the season that could have been in Norman, Oklahoma. The unfortunate thing for Oklahoma fans is when you say the season that could have been, they ask which one, because there's been a lot of these where they have just had a couple bad, maybe one bad trip up that's cost them. And that's the case again this year.
Yeah, I'm not a Brock Purdy fan, but I'm not a Brock Purdy fan either. But I am a Matt Campbell fan. I think he's a phenomenal coach. Interested to see if this is maybe his last year at Iowa State. So far the openings the rumors of the Texas job opening, which isn't, and Auburn's job is obviously open. But I think they're pretty close to naming a coach. Unless like Michigan pops up or even Penn State under some circumstances, that would be two places I could see Matt Campbell going. But he's killing it there. But I think when you beat a team once, I always think it's tough to beat them again. I really do, especially in college football. And I think Oklahoma, like Brian said, they're rolling right now. They have more talent, more playmakers. And Iowa State with Purdy and the running back Hall, they do have a really good 1-2 punch. But I think Lincoln Riley and the Sooners are going to be too much in the end.
Here's a question for you, because you mentioned the Texas job and Matt Campbell, and even Penn State and Michigan. I mean, and I'm sure there are examples. Are there a lot of examples, though, of a guy that would jump from a school like Iowa State, a school that will win a Power 5 conference one year and then jump to another program? And I'm not talking about Brian Kelly, in Cincinnati going to a New Year's Six and then flipping to Notre Dame. I'm talking like Power 5, successful, winning a conference championship and then flipping.
Sure, I think so, especially from a salary and resource point of view. I think right now you're seeing it a little bit actually. Mario Cristobal was apparently he's a favorite right now for the Auburn job. And obviously Oregon, they have the Nike, all that good stuff with Nike. And I believe they won the championship last year. Yeah, they won the Pac-12 last year. But going to Auburn, apparently Oregon, he is the 11th out of 12 highest paid salary in the conference, which is hard to believe because there's some pretty crappy programs out there.
Sure.
And obviously the Auburn job would be better paying. And then on the flip side of it is it's a much tougher job going to Oregon or going to Auburn. You're in the SEC West. You're playing Georgia every year. You're competing with Alabama in state for every top kid. So to your point, I guess the answer is I think yes, going Power 5 to Power 5 can be a really good decision, but it can also backfire as well.
Well, I'm saying I don't think we see it that much. I mean, Jimbo Fisher jumps to mind, but there were other circumstances there at Florida State.
I think a lot of like Iowa State isn't, the quote unquote football school. And I think that's really where that comes from. And and that when you have such good success at a program that really never had great success, I think that's why your name pops up like you're seeing with Matt Campbell.
Yep. Yep. And James Franklin would be another one, by the way, right? If he took
Sure.
the USC job.
Yeah, well, even going from Vanderbilt to Penn State.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah,
I
so
think
it doesn't happen often. I know what you're saying, but it does happen.
Yeah,
Yep,
for sure.
Well, I think
go ahead.
It's just going to be the money, guys. If the money's good enough, anybody allegiances mean nothing in the coaching world. If the money's good enough, they'll leave.
Money or stability, though. I mean, you're going to Auburn where you're I don't know if you're underfunded, but like you're outspent by LSU and Alabama every year. You're out traditioned. A&M, and you're out traditioned by two of those three schools, and you have Gus Malzahn, who I think did a good job, who produced more good seasons than I thought Auburn would have had. Right. Don't tell the Auburn fans that, just like a lot of fans, a little bit too high of expectations, but and then he gets canned. Boy, the money better really be good because you're giving up a ton of stability.
Yeah, I mean, money talks, and that's really why, at the end of the day, Ohio State, the Big Ten switched the rules so they could get in, gives them a chance at the playoff because that's going to bring in more revenue to the Big Ten. At the end of the day, it is all about the money. I do agree.
That, and it was absolutely the right thing to do to send Ohio State.
I mean, it was, but money talks at the with anything. Sure. So, off the money talk and off the Power 5 talk, we're going to go a little Group 5 action here for championship Saturday. This is probably one of the most interesting championship games. 3:30 ESPN. Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns take on Coastal Carolina. Two top 20 teams going at it.
I think Louisiana Lafayette, they're going to avenge that loss to Coastal Carolina, their only loss of the year. Coastal Carolina had that really fun game against BYU a couple weeks ago and then had like that sleeper last week where they like kind of sleptwalked through. And I think that the Raging Cajuns are going to come out and have something to prove on Saturday against Coastal Carolina and fighting Myrtle Beach goers.
The Chants. That's right. Yeah, I love that pick and every reason that you made it. And short of our man, Grant Opaliski, who is a Chant legend, huge fan, and a guest picker, I'm going to let the heart go above my head here, and I am going to pick the Chants to stay unbeaten, go 12-0, and go to a New Year's Six bowl game.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I'm going to go Louisiana as well. Same reason really as Brian, the early season loss. So far, my theme is kind of the early season loss to the opponent, and then kind of getting revenge on them in a championship game where it matters more. So I am going Billy Napier, another name that keeps popping up for coaching jobs, and the Louisiana Raging Cajuns to upset, if you will, Coastal Carolina and ruin their perfect season.
Great nicknames there, guys, in that game.
Tremendous. Yeah, that is good. Yeah. That is good. Next, talking on revenge again, ACC championship. Clemson, number 3, taking on number 2, Notre Dame. Tons of playoff implications on the line here in Charlotte on Saturday evening.
I'm going to take Clemson, and it's more of the fact it's just they skated by without Lawrence. Notre Dame did, and I think Trevor Lawrence makes the difference in this one. Ian Book's been there for 10 years. I feel like since Bob and I had the show, Ian Book has been the quarterback at Notre Dame, or an Ian Book lookalike.
I was going to say, he was just named Tommy Rees at the time.
Yeah, but he was.
Now Tommy Rees is the offensive coordinator.
And he goes by Tom Rees, of course. Of course.
Just M.Y.
Up, right.
Oh, that's yeah. But anyway, I'm taking Clemson just because, once again, I'm going to go with the theme as before. It's hard to beat a team twice, and I also think that Notre Dame got a little lucky the first time.
Yeah, I think this is a chance to be a pretty good game. I am going to pick Clemson as well. I think they both make the playoff, and it's a possibility that we see this same game on January 1st, 2 versus 3. But Clemson dressed in the home uniforms.
I'm going Clemson here too. I just don't see how Lawrence not playing game 1 against Notre Dame and Dabo, we're going to let this happen again. I like Clemson. I think Notre Dame, I'm with you, Bob. I think that they still make it. I think the playoffs pretty much set, and I think it's just about the seeding. I would be curious if they do a 2-3 matchup here, just because they'd be playing again back-to-back games type of thing, or if they move Ohio State up to 3 and slide Notre Dame to 4, so it's not the repeat game, and in this case, a third time these two teams are playing. But it would be pretty cool to see the rubber match too. I think that'd be pretty good, especially with how good the first game was, and I think the second game will be pretty good as well.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I don't think it's the committee's job to prevent rematches. Now, whether they do it or not, right, what they give as their verbiage or reasoning why they would avoid it, sure. But in theory, they should just rank 1, 2, 3, 4.
They should, and I think playing, those two teams would much rather play each other for that third game instead of being the 4 seed and having to take on Alabama, who's a well-oiled machine right now. And that's going to be actually our segue into our next pick. SEC Championship, 8 o'clock, Saturday night. Alabama, number 1, taking on, at the time, number 6, Florida, but they will definitely drop.
Well, it's a shame there's nothing else going on Saturday night because this one's going to be over early. Alabama is going to beat Florida, in my opinion. I think they're going to do it pretty handily. I don't hate Kyle Trask. I think he's pretty good, and not having Pitts on Saturday was big against it. It was big for Florida. But yeah, I don't think that they have the firepower to beat Alabama. I'd be shocked if they did.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop when it comes to Florida.
I see what you did there.
Alabama in a rout.
That was good, Bob. Well played. I'm going Alabama as well. I was really hoping Florida would win that game just so this would be a little bit, more enticing with the playoff on the line really for Florida if they were to win it. That door has probably closed with the loss. Now, if this game does get a little boring, like Brian mentioned, 8 o'clock ABC is Tulsa at Cincinnati. So you could always flip it over to that. Unfortunately, that's not going to be a pick on this week's show. Our final pick is the Illinois at Penn State, 5:30 on Saturday, part of the Big Ten Championship week slate. Penn State is 15-point favorites last I checked. So we would like, Brian, your thoughts on the game and a score. And with that, we would be able to determine if Penn State were to cover the spread.
Okay, well, I'm going to take Penn State to win. I think that it's going to be 28-20. 28-13, so that'll put her right at 15. So I'm going to take Penn State, and I'll take them to cover too. The only thing that worries me is Penn State's defense a little bit. I think the offense can get it going against Illinois, and I think we see more Clifford than Levis, put it that way. So maybe Dotson has another big game. Parker Washington could have another big game. Who knows? But I think Penn State will beat Illinois pretty handily.
Yeah, I agree. Without Lovey, and I think this team is playing for a lot more than your average middle of the road to bottom tier Big Ten team, and I think this is a great opportunity to now. Again, between you guys and me and our viewers, I would prefer that the season be over right now. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. If the players want to play, they should play, but they should think that the players should have final say, and maybe they do want to play. After this one, I think it should be done, and I think the players would very likely prefer to skip the bowl game, go home to their families. We'll see what happens, but I think they win this one big. Call it a 17-point victory.
I, too, think Penn State's going to win. I actually think they're going to win by more than both of you think. I think it's going to be a 35-10 ball game for a couple of reasons. I think, Illinois not having Lovie Smith, and I'm kind of surprised they fired him. I don't know who they think they're going to get that's better, or at least a better name than Lovie Smith to be their head coach. All things considered, it is Illinois football at the end of the day. Thought he did an okay job there. I guess it wasn't good enough and up to their standards. But I think, Penn State, the way that they played in the second half on Saturday against Michigan State. Hoping it carries over a little bit into this game. It gives the seniors at least one more game in Beaver Stadium, depending on what they decide for their future. So I think that's a nice little consolation prize, if you will, here at the end of the season and end on a 4-game winning streak.
I like it. Very good. Bryan McSorley, welcome back to the Nittany Lion Sports Report, my friend. Thanks for taking the plunge with us and making some picks tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'll have to know where I set up in the rankings after this.
Absolutely, man. We will keep you apprised. And again, the undefeated 6-0 record is still out there for the taking. So maybe you'll be the one to take that title.
Oh, I'd love to, Bob. Even though we know from my singing abilities, there was a reason I got there. So.
Bryan McSorley, former Nittany Lion Sports Report host, our distinguished guest tonight. Tyler Gehlhaus with me as well. And I am Bob Long, saying so long here. Thanks for being with us all season long. And we'll at least have a wrap-up show, but we'll see in just a short week whether Penn State is going to decide to pursue the bowl angle or not. So a lot more to come, but enjoy the football this weekend, everyone.